I rode a unicycle, and I had never ridden one, and I had to learn to ride one, but I walked the route on a unicycle just to be different. The PD would have me doing stuff like that. And if he was alive now, he'd be having the morning guy broadcast from a chicken coop, and he'd be giving away a dozen eggs every hour because of the way that he was plugged in to what's happening now in the news and stuff. That's missed in radio now.
Welcome once again to the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. It's an honor to be speaking with Terry Motormouth Young. Thanks for coming on our podcast.
Hi there, how you doing? Good to see what's happening. I don't know anyway. Let me tell you, you know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm trying to say? Yes,
all right. Tell us about your life growing up and what inspired you to get into the theater of the mind.
My dad was in the business, and he was in management and sales, but I was and became a station owner, and I was turned on to radio when Fred Freelance in Roanoke, Virginia, played the Beatles, and I watched the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and my babysitter told me about the Beatles when I was in the 5th grade, and I had a play television station down my basement. I used to play like I was on the TV doing the news and the weather and stuff. And when the Beatles happened, I switched to making a radio station in my basement. And I got the Beatles songs from my dad's radio station because they played country music and easy listening. So all the rock songs I could bring home. And so I had a little radio station in the basement when I was in the 5th grade. And I would come home after school and play DJ. And that's how it started, dude, 1964.
Now, did you have a reel-to-reel tape recorder as well? Because your dad owned a radio station.
I had three of them. And I had 2 turntables and a microphone. And I had 3 reel-to-reels. And I would have a jingle on one reel. I'd have a commercial on another reel-to-reel and another commercial on a reel-to-reel. And I would play it, make it sound like a real radio station. And I had... I would also listen to other DJs and, mimic them and stuff. And my favorites were Big Jack Armstrong and Dan Ingram, and I like the real Don Steele. And those 3 guys, I think I made all the 3 of them into me, kind of, because I used to listen to them, and I like them. And
I got to meet Dan Ingram about 30 years ago, and then Don I never met, but his wife gave me my first paying gig ever in radio.
Real Don Steele gave you your first paying gig. Good for you,
well,
man.
Yeah, actually, his wife did.
What year was that?
That was in 1993. His wife was the music director of the radio station. Her name was Shawn, by the way. Sadly, we just lost her about a year ago, but she gave me my first paying gig ever in radio to tabulate the top 500 oldies as determined by the listeners of Oldies 93 KCVS FM.
And you had to go in there and transcribe it and figure it all out, huh?
Yep, it was awesome.
Did you ever get a chance to meet Real Don Steele, or he had passed?
No, he was still alive, but I never got a chance to meet him. I've met many people who worked with him, like world famous Tom Murphy, Machine Gun Kelly, and a couple of others, but never got to meet Don personally.
I never met him, but I just heard he smoked those cigarettes when he was on the air.
Yeah,
great jock,
great DJ, and just larger than life, as the old saying goes. And you got to go to a great station in Richmond, Virginia, WLEE 1480. You were there for about 3 or 4 years. Tell us about Lee.
Well, Big Lee was, I was born in Roanoke, Virginia, and in 1967 I moved to Richmond, Virginia. And my dad took me there back in 1966, and because he was thinking of moving there, and he took me to WLEE, and I got to go inside the station and all that. But I went to high school in Richmond in 67, 68. I graduated in 1971 in Huguenot High School, Richmond, Virginia. But my first radio job in Richmond, Virginia was at WLEE. It was not at WLEE, you needed a first-class license to work at WLEE because they had the directional AM transmitter kind of a deal, and you had to have a first-class radio license to do the night show. And those are the only kind of jobs I was going to be able to get. I knew that. So I went to school and got my first-class license. And once I got that, WLEE had an opening in 1973. Shane had left. He had been their night jock for a while, and he had gone to KBW in Buffalo, and they had an opening. And so I sent them a tape, and they granted me an interview, and I got the job. And I went to work in there in 1973, and Bob Paiva was the engineer, well, not the engineer, this was the program director, and they brought in a whole new staff. After they hired me, then they hired Jim King as the morning man. He came in from WWDJ in New York City, but he was laid off and was looking for a job. So he came in and became the morning man, and he stayed there longer than I did. And then they brought in a buddy of mine from Raleigh. I was in Raleigh before WLEE, and Dan Cameron was doing afternoons, and they brought him in. But at WLEE, I did 7 to midnight, and the competition was Q94, and they wouldn't play any black songs. I mean, we're talking about 1974, Jungle Boogie by Kool and the Gang. They wouldn't play it, and not even the whole, just old-fashioned prejudice, man, black people or whatever, but. I achieved success by being able to play, Kool and the Gang and Led Zeppelin, Black Dog. And my whole concern about the top 40 format, at that time in the 70s, was it was going so AC and so not too hard and not too soft. They were leaning in that direction. And but my ratings, back then you didn't have to pay for the ratings either. My ratings would come out every 4 times a year, not every month like they do now. But the ratings would come out, and I would always have the target audience, which my target audience was a 12 to 24-year-old, and I was always number one in that category. And so Big Lee was a great radio station. I really liked working there.
In fact, they did a documentary a couple of years ago, I noticed. They've got it on YouTube called Remembering WLEE 1480 AM. Now, you got interviewed for that documentary. Were there any fun factoids you wanted to share that got cut for time? Because oftentimes when people get interviewed for a documentary or even a newscast, a lot of information gets edited because of time. Was there any other fun stories that wasn't included in that documentary that you'd love to share today?
Not really. I just remembered all the stuff that I did. I rode an elephant dressed in a pink tuxedo with a top hat and a cane in the circus came to town. So they put me on the elephant with a pink tuxedo and a top hat. And this was the idea of the program director, Bob Paiva. And for the walkathon, instead of me walking the thon to raise money for whatever the money raiser was, I don't know, it was a walkathon, I rode a unicycle. And I had never ridden one, and I had to learn to ride one, but I walked the route on a unicycle just to be different. The PD would have me doing stuff like that. And if he was alive now, he'd be having the morning guy broadcast from a chicken coop, and he'd be giving away a dozen eggs every hour because of the way that he was plugged in to what's happening now in the news and stuff. And that's missed in radio now. It's not doing that anymore. Radio has a person get in their car for 7 minutes, and they've got 7 minutes to get him. And that's why they spend that 7 minutes on commercials, because they figure if we're going to lose him in a commercial, let's lose him in 7 minutes of one. And then they get all their 7 minutes out at once, and then they play their tested songs, dude. And they have 3 tested songs that they guarantee will hold him in that automobile for those 7 minutes when he's trying to get from point A to point B. And that's what radio is all about now. And I can't work in that kind of environment.
Interesting you mentioned that, because Tom Murphy, who I interviewed about 2 years ago, he was good friends with the real Don Steele. He was on Kissin' in Portland, as well as KGR Seattle and KRLA Los Angeles and Kiss FM and AM. He told me that when he was at KFI, it was playing Middle of the Road Easy Listening, and the program director tested Mandy by Barry Manilow. And he said, "Why are you testing that song? You tested it now, you tested it 6 months ago. People liked it then. They like it now. They liked it back in 1975. What's it going to take to convince you that people like Mandy?" And the PD said, "We just had an earthquake. I'm afraid people might have changed their mind." Which is like, huh?
Well, I don't know. I've worked with a lot of people in the business, and it comes down to two factors in the people that I've met in this radio business. You're either hip or you're unhip, and there's a lot of unhip people that are now holding the throne or sitting on the throne or calling shots. And I started my own radio station to try to come up with a format that could adapt to something that could be on the radio or something someone would listen to, because, radio sales are down. People don't go and buy a radio anymore. Mm-hmm. They don't even go and buy a clock radio. So sales for radio products are like nil. And that's also sad news. But I was working, my last radio station was here in Tampa, and after that no longer existed, I just looked at what was happening, and I said, well, I want to stay on the air. I want to develop a format and to listen to it and hear it. And then if you want to put it on your radio station, I'm part of the package. Give me a call. But I had to launch it myself so people could hear it. And now it's on the air, and I do a show every day. It plays again in the morning. And so the format is Terry Young Mornings, Terry Young Evenings, and the top 5 countdown every hour, music from the 80s, 70s, and 60s. And it's WTYT.fun. And that should be easy to remember, but WTYT.fun, and then it plays. And I'm on in the morning, and I'm on in the evening. And the top 5 countdown plays every hour. And it's either the top 5 from a year in the 80s, mm-hmm. a year in the 70s, or a year in the 60s. And it's on this day, on that day, or today. What's today? February 6th, 7th?
7th, yeah.
Today, okay, February 7th, 1974, the top 5 countdown. And then I play other songs, but that's the format. And mm-hmm. It's original. It showcases the music. It plays after the top 5 countdown. It plays 2 or 3 songs from another year. It doesn't go from 1963 to 1968, and it'll play 2 songs from each year at least after the top 5 countdown. So you can kind of remember the music instead of bouncing all around and trying to get those 7 minutes of people in their cars. I'm kind of if you can get them to listen for 17 minutes, more than a quarter hour, you've won the whole hour as far as the rating game goes. And that's another part of their, radio program today, where they run 12 minutes of commercials and then play 30 minutes of music.
It's interesting. Bill Drake, when he created the Boss Radio format, his rule was no more than 13 minutes of commercials per hour, and no more than 70 seconds per commercial break, which was great for the advertiser, great for the listener, because the advertiser was guaranteed they'd get their ad 1 or 2 spots into the break or out of the break, and then the listener wouldn't have to wait, 10 minutes to get back to the music. They were drawn and they were teased with something. I'm coming back with such and such. So you wanted to stay through the commercial because you did not want to miss what was coming up.
I agree. But they won't do that today. And supposedly they played that format you're talking about to focus groups. You know what a focus group is. Mm-hmm. And they played that kind of a format to a focus group and seen them lose interest within the 2 minutes of the commercials. And so they decided conclusively, let's stick with the 8 minutes of spots. And it sucks, dude. And I don't like it. But, what do? Well, you start your own radio station. And that's what I did.
Yeah, WTYT.fun is the website where you can listen to you anytime, 24/7, with both a morning as well as an evening show. Now, after WLEE, you were there till 1976. You went to New Orleans for a couple of years on several stations, including WTIX, the Mighty 690. Tell us about that station.
The thing about WTIX was I was promoted to music director there, and I've had a strong concern of every station always playing the right songs. So they promoted me to music director, and in that position, we came up with Power Currents, and we started playing popular songs every 90 minutes, and we'd figure out what those 3 popular songs were, and we'd play them every 90 minutes. And one of them, I remember at the time, was Anne Murray, You Needed Me.
We are talking with Terry Motormouth Young, and check out his website. He's got a radio station, WTYT.fun. That's WTYT.fun. And next time, speaking of fun, we'll talk about more great stories, including an innovation that was not very popular back in the day, but it's very popular now when it comes to how radio station songs are decided. We also talk about more of his time in New Orleans, including a local new wave band that he was able to get on the air, and also a radio station called Whale. We'll find out about that next time.